It doesn't matter who you elect. You can elect Trump, you can elect Biden, you can elect Putin. Hell, you can even elect Mr. Beast. But they all have to bow down to bondholders. Without bonds, the government can't pay anybody, and the entire system breaks down. This gives bondholders unimaginable power, and they use it to the very max. But before I can talk about all the different ways bondholders have a stranglehold over the government, I first need to explain how bonds work. Now, this is a simplified explanation, but the point is still the same. This is how much money in 2024 America spent. They spent almost $7 trillion on things like Social Security, healthcare, defense, and this is how much they brought in, almost 5 trillion. And it was brought in mostly from taxes. You have individual income tax, payroll tax, corporate tax. But now there's a discrepancy. America is spending more than it's bringing in. It is spending almost 2 trillion more. This is the American deficit for 2024. They have a deficit of $2 trillion. So, in order to cover this deficit, the government basically goes around and begs people. It says, please give us $100. And in around 10 years, we'll give you around $110. So you have a little bit of profit for giving us money now. And people who have a little bit extra money lying around will take the government up on this offer. So you have people like Jitty over here who are going to be like, okay, I'll take this deal. And they'll give the government the $100 that they need right now. And in return, in about 10 years, they'll get a little bit richer. They'll have $110. So the government gets to cover the deficit, and the people who let the government cover that deficit become a little bit richer. A win win for both sides. But there's a big problem here. The American government is completely addicted to these bonds. Every year, the American deficit has been growing more and more and more to the point that in 2025, the deficit is $36 trillion. And I promise you, this is not slowing down anytime soon. Like I showed you, last year, $2 trillion were borrowed, and this year is likely going to be even higher or at least the same. The government cannot function without bonds, which creates a really bad and weird power dynamic between the government and the bondholders. Let's say, for example, the government takes a look at Clash Royale and it finds out it is a dogshit pay to win card game. It siphons money from people who have addictive personalities and destroys young men's finances. It eats away your brain, leaving only Mega Knight spammers when you should be going out and making memories with real friends. So, after noticing how harmful Clash Royale is to the American citizens, the government decides to ban it. But not so fast. Because remember, our friend Jitty over here, his entire career, his net worth, his YouTube revenue all depends on Clash Royale. So he hates the Clash Royale ban. So, in order to remove that ban, all Jinxie has to do is stop buying government bonds. He just has to stop giving the government money. And since the American government cannot survive without bonds because they are running a deficit every single year, they have no choice but to cancel that ban so that Jinxie can keep buying bonds. A law that would be an unequivocal positive for the American citizens is going to be removed because bondholders don't like it. This is exactly what's happening in America right now. What the voters want does not matter. The only thing the government needs to care about is what the bondholders need. So, who exactly are these bondholders that America's been sucking off? Well, this is a breakdown of all the people that hold American bonds. So this adds up totally to $36 trillion. So the first group, state and local governments, and the Federal Reserve. This basically means the American government is holding a lot, almost 10 trillion in bonds for themselves. This is so they can do their own shenanigans like quantitative easing and stuff like that. That's its own video. Another group, the foreign governments. This is mostly China and Japan. They hold a lot of American bonds because of how much they import into the country. And then we have banks and Wall Street. Obviously, they're going to be in here because they want safe assets and stuff. And then we have Social Security and trust funds, which are mostly the boomers. So these are the groups that America looks out for the most because they buy the most bonds. These groups have immense sway over what policies are made. For example, when Trump first introed the tariffs. Now, the goal of the tariffs was to reduce American dependence on importing and bring manufacturing back to America to hopefully create new jobs. Now, I'll be the first to say I don't agree with the tariffs because they don't achieve any of what they were set out to do. And all they did was increase prices for Americans. But the intentions were still a good thing. The intentions were to help create jobs for Americans, for the working class, which is still a really good thing. And I would support that. And honestly, if Trump didn't flip flop between removing tariffs, keeping them on, removing them every other day, we would probably have created actual factories in America and given actual people jobs. Now, do Americans want factory jobs? That's a different story. But the goal is jobs would have still been created if he didn't flip flop. So, why was he constantly moving from 100% tariffs to no tariffs to 100% again? Why was that happening? Well, the bond markets played a huge part in fighting back against the tariffs because who is going to be hurt the most from tariffs? It's going to be foreign governments like China. And who holds $8 trillion in bonds? The foreign governments. So, when the tariffs hit, these governments took the advice of the great Warren Buffett and freaked the fuck out. They panic sold everything. 10-year bond yields started to spike so bad. It was the largest since 2001, since the dot-com bubble. And people were really starting to get scared. It was getting so bad that even Trump was tuning in and saying stuff like, people are getting a little queasy. Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line, Trump said. They were getting a little yippy. You know, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid. Yeah, because you unleashed insane amount of tariffs on the country, on different countries who already buy so many bonds. So obviously they're going to start selling them. And on top of this, future bonds that America would start issuing and auctioning out were also being unsold. US Treasury auctions see weak demand in 30-year bonds, decline in US Treasuries. Weak Treasury auction flashes more warning lights on the bond market. And this was primarily because of foreign buyers. Once again, notably absent from this auction, overseas investors bought 62% of the bonds. That was down 88% in April. Now, I know these don't look like big percentages, but this accounts for billions and hundreds of billions lost in bond revenue for the government, which is a bad look. And because of this, this was the primary reason that Trump had to finally roll back the tariffs. A 90-day pause. So stupid. Within 14 hours, Trump would go on to execute one of the biggest economic policy reversals in the modern presidential history, which is the reversal of the tariffs. Trump was forced to roll back the tariff policies, which might have been positive for the working class, not because the people didn't like it or the people that voted for him didn't like it, but because other countries hated the policy. This is so unreal. He was forced to roll back tariffs because the countries he put the tariffs on didn't like it and they stopped buying the American bonds. Do you see how backwards the system is? China, America's direct rival, has more sway on American policies than its own people. The American voter no longer matters. All that matters is that bonds continue to be bought. So, in order to keep these groups happy, for example, in order to keep the Social Security and the Trust Fund group happy, which owns 7 trillion bonds, they keep the housing prices really high to keep the boomers feeling happy and wealthy. Boomers accounted for 42% of buyers and 53% of sellers, the highest of any age group. In order to keep banks and Wall Street happy, banks got a $250 billion bailout when normal people only got $46 billion. This is unreal. Banks, which were responsible for the 2008 financial crisis, got a $250 billion bailout, and the normal people got a $46 billion bailout. And this wasn't even a bailout. This was just to help them with foreclosures. This was not supporting the families. And finally, to keep foreign governments happy, we let companies like Temu milk American consumers dry. So, the only way young people and working people's voices can be heard is if they buy bonds. So, I will step up, guys. I will create a working class trust fund. We'll all contribute just a few $1 trillion. That's all we need. And we can finally have a voice in the government. We just need to be trillionaires. Thank you for watching.